Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. It's been over a week since my last video. It could be 2 weeks actually, but yeah, I've been quite ill. I've caught a virus and I lost my voice, so I couldn't come on the mic. I was active on Twitter though, but anyway, my voice is much better, so I'm starting to do videos again. Lots have happened around the world, especially around Russia, obviously Gaza, and also China as well. So lots to talk about. I'm going to be talking about Russia today. I'll do a separate video about the other subjects on a bit later on, either today or tomorrow. But let's concentrate on Russia. As I'm doing this video right now, Zelensky and the seven dwarfs, and we're talking about the seven European leaders, the puppets, are on their way to Washington to have a meeting with Trump. Trump had a meeting one-on-one with Putin on a few days ago, and it was quite funny actually. Lavrov came in to the meeting wearing a CCCP t-shirt, and I thought that was quite hilarious. And they tried to talk about it, but Rubio tried to talk about it, and they ended up laughing. So I thought that was quite hilarious. But the fact is that Trump put out a red carpet for Putin just tells you everything. It shows that America is putting out all stops to make peace with Russia. That's a big difference from a few years ago. A few years ago, Putin was the number one enemy of United States. He is more evil than Hitler. Apparently, that's what they were saying. They said he was going to die of cancer. They said that Russia was losing. They said that the ruble is going to turn into rubble. They sent all these weapons into Ukraine, all these game changers, HIMARS, javelins, tanks, all these supposedly game changers to turn the tide of the war in Ukraine's favor. They said that Russia's been losing more troops in Ukraine. They said that Russia's going to run out of weapons. They said that Russians got no semiconductors and they are stealing semiconductors from fridges to put onto missiles. All of these ridiculous lies and stories were coming out of the West, all of them. And at this time, Zelensky was their star of the show. They were giving him standing ovations in Congress. He was everybody's best friend. They were raising Ukrainian flags everywhere. If you go on Twitter, you see all these Ukrainian flags. All these people putting it up with their bio, waving the Ukrainian flags all over Europe. You see Ukrainian flags in people's windows and stuff. It's all gone. It's all gone, guys. You don't see any Ukrainian flags anymore in anybody's Twitter bio unless you're Ukrainian. So yeah, it's all gone. It's so funny how things change in a short space of time, and we're not even talking decades here. We're just talking a year or maybe even 2 years at the max. It's so funny how things change. But let's not forget that it was America that actually started this conflict. It was America that pushed a regime change. They organized the Maidan. They organized a coup in Ukraine in 2014, which forced Russia to take Crimea, because if they didn't, then Crimea would have been taken by NATO, and Crimea would have been used as a base to attack Russia in the future. So there is no way Putin was going to give away Crimea, especially with Ukraine trying to join NATO. But it was America that actually pushed this war, because you know back then when the Soviet collapsed, and they signed a deal, and they signed a deal with especially with the Berlin Wall and giving back the other half back to Germany. They said that they're not going to move 1 inch of NATO towards Russia. That's what they wrote down and promised. And then Russia destroyed the Warsaw Pact, and And yeah, everything seemed fine. Then suddenly, Russia was really having a lots of economic issues. Obviously, they had a lot of problems with the economy. You had Mr. Soros stealing a lot of money from Russia, almost collapsed the whole country. So Russia was not doing well at the time. Then Putin comes along, and he's been their savior. And slowly but surely, Russia started to get their superpower status again, and rightly deserved. It's taken a long time, but it's been a very hard journey from Russia. So all of these, Russia was beating Ukraine at the time around 2014 when they took Crimea. Obviously, they had a chance to destroy Ukrainians' military, and they signed a peace treaty. And back then, it was Merkel that was leading the charge. So she was good friends with Putin at the time, and they signed a Minsk One treaty. Eventually, went on to Minsk Two, and even Merkel has said very recently. She said that all of these Minsk One and Two was just diversion tactic, or it was just a tactic to slow Russia down. It would give time for them to um, arm Ukraine to the teeth, train their soldiers, put NATO bases in Ukraine. So Ukraine would have been a de facto member of NATO, even though they're not a fully fledged member. They are a de facto member. All of the troops are NATO trained troops. All of the weapons are NATO weapons, and all the weapons are from the West. So it's pretty much like a NATO country, except it's not part of NATO. So Russia did warn America at the time. They said, "Look, we don't want Ukraine to join NATO. This is a huge security issue for us. We want you to stop killing Russians in the Donbass. We want you to stop destroying Russian Orthodox churches. We want you to stop this, banning of Russian language in Ukraine." So there was a lot of demands in Minsk one and two, and back then, the West thought that Russia wasn't powerful enough to fight the West and NATO at the same time. So they told Ukraine, "Oh, don't worry about what Russia said. Just ignore them. Just carry on doing what you want. You'll join NATO. Russia can't do anything about it. Don't worry. They're just weak. Their economy is destroyed. The country's about to fall apart. So don't worry. Just carry on doing what you're doing." So America, especially the person in charge of that operation, Victoria Nuland, she pushed for the Maidan, and she put the puppet in place, Zelensky. And the Americans were, all thinking they're high and mighty, thinking, yeah, Russia's not going to do anything. And guess what? Russia fought back. Russia fought back, and they absolutely kicked not only Ukraine's ass, but also NATO's ass as well, and Americans' ass, because NATO is America. It literally is American weapons. There is no such thing as NATO weapons. These are all American weapons. They kicked Europeans' asses. They said that the sanctions would destroy Russia. I mean, how arrogant do you have to be? I mean, the hubris of the West. They just think the world revolves around the West. They think, oh, we can just apply sanctions to Russia and the whole country will fall apart. There's no such thing as the global South. There's no other country in the world. There's no China. There's no India. There's no Africa. There's no Middle East. It's all about the Europeans. If we've applied these sanctions, then Russia would collapse. Well, they applied the sanctions on Russia, and guess what? Did Russia collapse? No, they became much stronger because guess what? China's got everything that Russia needs. And anything they want that they used to buy from Russia, China has. Whether it's semiconductors, whether it's EV cars, any sorts of electronics, laptops, software, anything, you name anything, China doesn't have. China's got everything. So basically, Russia opened up the whole market to Chinese companies, and all the Western companies pretty much left, giving China a free rein in Russian's economy. And he just brought the two countries closer together, to be honest. And it's a match made in heaven. China needs the raw materials that Russia has, like oil, gas, rare earths and other uranium and other minerals and stuff like that. And China's got the economy, China's got the people. So it's a match made in heaven. And since Russia had all these sanctions, Russia is given the Russians the real, impetus to really push innovation in Russia. So all of these startups were happening in Russia, replacing Western companies that left. Russians started doing their own manufacturing. They were obviously with the help of the Chinese. They were doing everything by themselves. And rather than importing goods from the West, now Russia pretty much is self-sufficient. They get the stuff they need from China, but rest of the stuff they're pretty much self-sufficient. And it's actually made Russia much, much stronger. Their manufacturing has become much higher than it was. The ruble's become stronger. They started building alternative financial systems because they got banned from the SWIFT. And it pushed de-dollarization across the world. And also, Russia started diverting a lot of the gas towards China that used to go to Europe. Europe started buying much more expensive LNG from America. So all of this has done is basically destroyed the European economy because they lost access to cheap gas and oil. And they do buy it from Russia by through middlemen from India and other middle parties. However, the price is much more expensive when they do that because you have to pay the middleman. And Europe's economy is absolutely been destroyed because they've lost access to cheap gas. And they also have to buy very expensive LNG from United States, which means that their companies make a huge loss because the cost of production is so expensive that companies are just closing down. Like in Germany right now, there's bankruptcies happening like 70 a day, I read in an article. And already this year, already 700, more than 700 companies have gone bankrupt, and it's rising every single year. And because it's just not worth it anymore. Because if you have to, if it's going to cost so much money to make these goods in Germany, but if China's making them for half the price, you might as well just save your money. You might as well just buy those Chinese goods, right? There's no point doing all the manufacturing and you know spending all the money on labor costs and stuff. But end of the day, your products are not going to compete in the global market. If your product goes against a Chinese product, which is half the price, people would rather buy the Chinese product because end of the day, people want cheaper goods nowadays, especially with this economy, with high inflation. Anytime people want to save money, they will. So European companies are just going bankrupt. American companies are also going bankrupt as well. And all these sanctions are boomeranged towards the West. They have thrown everything at Russia. Every single thing, every single sanction they have thrown at Russia has not worked. Have thrown every single weapon in Ukraine, has not worked. For years, they've been lying to the people. For years, the Western media was saying Ukraine was winning and Russia was losing. Russia's losing more soldiers in Ukraine. For years, they've been doing that. Propaganda from, British media like Sky News and American media as well. And but people are not stupid. People can see it's all BS. People don't trust the mainstream media anymore, especially after what's happening in Gaza. You can see how much the mainstream media lies. They lie for Israel, they lie for the West. They lie. You basically, Western journalism is not independent anymore. They will basically report on what orders that are given to them. This is not a democracy, guys. Democracy is just a sham in the West. So now Trump has come into power and Trump has realized, oh crap, we're losing this war in Ukraine and Russia's, on its way to take over half of Ukraine, maybe more. And this is really bad news. What do we do? Russia's really close to China. We want to keep China and Russia separate. So what the hell are we doing? We need to make peace with Russia. So they decided to make peace with Russia. And you can see with Trump putting in the red carpet treatment, he's basically going all out to make peace with Russia. But there are other reasons as well. There are other reasons why Trump is doing this. Maybe one reason is because of Israel. And Israel wants America's full attention when it comes to the Middle East, with the wars that they're doing in the Middle East. They want to annex Gaza and West Bank. They want to fight against Iran. They want the Greater Israel Project. So it could be. I mean, everybody knows that Trump is, a puppet for Israel. He basically doesn't say no to Israel. He does everything that they want. So it could be that Israel has, or his master Netanyahu has told him that, stop the war in Ukraine and focus everything on Israel. Give us all the money, give us all the weapons. We need it because we're fighting all these wars in the Middle East for you. So it could be because of that, that he's making peace with Russia. Um, because I'll tell you what, he is willing to destroy all ties with Europe for this. And it has to be very, very important for him to do this. It doesn't make any sense why he would cut ties with Europe. Maybe he's cutting ties with Europe because he knows Europe is no longer powerful anymore. Europe no longer has the cards. For example, you've seen Ursula coming to Washington the other day and completely capitulating on the trade deal. She gave Trump everything that he wanted and more. Literally everything. That showed tremendous amount of weakness, especially to Europe. It showed that Europe is weak, it doesn't have any cards, it doesn't have any military, and Trump knows this, so he's really pushing them around. And Trump respects strength. Like with China, he cannot mess around with China. As you've seen what China can do to America, completely destroy the economy if they wanted to. So he cannot mess around with China, but with Europe is completely different. He knows Europe is finished. And I think he's going to focus on Israel and the Middle East. So he wants to make peace with Russia. But the bigger picture is he wants to split Russia and China, which is never going to happen, guys. Never, ever in a million years. Russia is not that stupid. Putin is definitely, one of the most intelligent leaders that Russia's ever had. He is not going to fall for America's tricks, ever. Because if you think about it, guys, I mean, if Trump, if Putin decide, if Putin decides to listen to Trump and cut ties with China, 2 years or 3 years later, when Trump is out of power, and then you get the Democrats back in again, what's going to happen then? They're going to start fighting with the Russia and start bullying Russia all over again. You know, Putin knows this. He knows America is not a long-term solution. They change their mind from day to day to day to day. Every single day Trump wakes up, he changes his mind. And every 4 years they have a completely new party, Democrats, Republicans. So you cannot make any deals with America. You cannot, because Trump will come in, he'll sign a loads of executive orders, then Democrats will come in, they'll cancel these executive orders, then Trump will come in again, he'll sign all these executive orders again, cancel all Democrats' orders. You cannot plan anything long term, and Putin knows this. China is a lot more stable at the moment, and the Chinese, they look at long-term goals and um, long-term plans. And what they are doing, they are building a multipolar world. They are building bricks. They are building their economies, which is basically American proof. And what I mean by American proof is sanction proof. So America cannot, sanction these countries ever again because they've got alternatives to SWIFT, they got alternatives to the dollar, they got alternative banking systems, financial systems, they got alternative trade deals with each other. So basically, you want to make yourself as a country completely sanction proof. You never want to rely on America. I mean, this is the mistake India has done. India has completely relied on America, and look what America's done to them: 50% tariffs, completely destroying India's economy. And India's got nothing more, nowhere to go now, because they've destroyed links with the global South. They've destroyed links with China, with Russia, with every single country, all their neighbors, just to get a piece of pie from the Americans. And guess what? Americans have just stabbed them in the back. So what they're going to do now? You can never ever rely on America. So this is why Putin's not going to fall for the trap ever. So I want to kind of show you this article here. So another reason I think this has all been happening is basically, I can't say these words on YouTube, but you can see from the screen. And just for those people who are not looking at the screen and just listening to my voice, um, there was an incident with Jeffrey. I'm not going to say the full name, but you know who I'm talking about. Jeffrey, and the second name starts with the E. Ep. I'm not going to say it. But he was supposed to release the files and he didn't. And then he had a lot of pressure from his own MAGA crowd and stuff. And then a week later, he started messing around with Russian deadlines. First, it was 50 days deadline. Then he says it's 10 days deadline. Then the 10 days deadline came up. And on the 10th day, he said, "Oh, I'm going to have a meeting with Putin, with Russia." And and now he wants to have a meeting with Zelensky. Personally, I think this is all a show, guys. This is all a show because this is why I think this is all a show. This is all for the cameras, by the way. I think it's all to first of all distract him from the Jeffery E files. So this is a great distraction for him. You notice that no papers reporting Jeffery E files again. Nobody's talking about it. Everyone's talking about Russia. And also, this is not the way diplomacy is held, around the world. When you do diplomacy with other countries, discussions are taking place behind the scenes. This is not a show for the camera. This is not a show for the reporters. This is not a show for the media. These are all discussions that need to be happened behind the scenes. And then when you meet up in person, that's when you have a press conference, you announce the deal, and that's it. That's how you do it. So what Trump has done when he met with Putin is he met with Putin first, and I think this is what Trump thinks because he's a businessman, right? He thinks that if I meet with Putin face to face, I'll convince him to do a ceasefire. I'll give him the art of the deal, and he can't say no to me face to face. This is what Trump thinks, but international diplomacy doesn't work like that. International diplomacy, you have to iron out every single details. Why is Russia in this position in the first place? And you have to go all the way back to the Maidan. You have to go all the way back to NATO and Donbass and all the stuff that America has done supplying weapons to Ukraine and all the stuff, all of Russia's security guarantees. And is Trump ready to provide all of that? I don't think so. So I think what Trump is doing is this is all diversionary tactics, first of all, because this is not how diplomacy in the real world happens. In the real world, Trump would have sent Witkoff to Moscow, got him to agree a deal or a ceasefire. Then they would have met up face to face. And then when they did a press conference in front of the whole world, joint press conference, they could say, as of today, we announced a ceasefire. We had discussions behind the scenes with Putin, with Zelensky, with the Europeans, and this is what we decided, and this is what's happening. And so the ceasefire will start now. This is the roadmap. This is the roadmap to peace. That's how real diplomacy works. And this is how real diplomacy happened all over the world, from all over history. But Trump decides to do something different. And this is all like a show. It's like a whole show, like a circus. And people are more worried about him having another episode with Zelensky and another clown show. I don't know, guys. I mean, Zelensky is ready to meet Trump today. I don't know what kind of clown show is going to happen in front of the cameras. I guarantee it's going to be epic, whatever happens. So, where do we go from here? I mean, I don't know. I don't think Zelensky wants peace because Zelensky is not in charge, first of all. Secondly, I don't think the Europeans want peace because, according to the Europeans, they think Russia's weak. They think Russia just needs a little bit of a push and Russia will collapse. They already spent like 400, 500 billion on this war, so obviously they want to go all in. The only people who want out are the Americans because they have other interests like Israel, Jeffery E, and other things. Trump is obviously focused on China as their number one thing they need to focus on, and they think all of this Russian stuff is a distraction for America. So America has got its own interests. Europe has got its own interests. Zelensky's got his own interests. And Putin's not going to want peace unless all the SMO, special military operations objectives have been met, which is denazification, demilitarization, and I can't remember the other one, guys. You'll have to remind me. I think there is another one, but yeah, but the SMO objectives have not been met yet because even if there's a ceasefire or peace, there's still a lots of uh, NAZI, Azov military guys running around. Ukraine will still be militarized, and I think if there is a peace or if there is a ceasefire, I think the West and America will carry on arming Ukraine. And they've done that in the past. They've done it after 2014. They've armed Ukraine to the teeth. This has cost Russians more lives and money because of that Minsk 1 and 2 agreements. So Putin cannot agree another Minsk agreement or a ceasefire until all those needs are met. Because 10 years later, what's going to happen if Ukraine is allowed to be militarized again? And they're going to start doing the same thing, and that's going to cost more Russian lives, more Russian money at the expense of more European lives. So they need to put an end to this right now. And they cannot do ceasefires because ceasefires don't work. I mean, the example is in Syria, right? They did a ceasefire with all those terrorists held up in Idlib. They had a chance back in the day. You had the Iranians, the Russians, and Syrian army fighting together. And they had a chance to wipe out these terrorists, HTS terrorists in Idlib. And the Americans got involved and they organized some sort of ceasefire with Assad, which was a big mistake, to be honest, because 10 years later, you see, the terrorists in Idlib basically got rearmed, retrained, and now they've taken over all of Syria. So that was a huge mistake. If you need to finish them off, you need to finish them off. Otherwise, 10 years later, you don't know what's going to happen, So I think Putin knows this, and he will make all necessary precautions to avoid this to happen. And I think if those needs are not SMO needs are not met, and he does a ceasefire, I think it's going to be a huge mistake for Russia. I think Putin's going to take a lot of hits from the Russian oligarchs and Russian people if he agrees to a ceasefire without, meeting all the SMO objectives. Then, yeah, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Putin is far too clever and far too shrewd for that to happen. Putin does want peace with America because he knows America has different interests. America, especially with Trump, doesn't see Russia as an enemy. They have more important interests, like in Israel, like in China, and other things. They know that Russia is not their main enemy. Putin knows this. Trump knows this. Um, But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll talk about this in part two after Zelensky meets Trump and the Europeans. We'll see what kind of clown show happens, what kind of circus happens, and we'll see if any agreement comes out of it, which I doubt, by the way. But we'll see, we'll see. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now.